The autumn moon hung low over the Iron Ridge Pack's trading square, casting silver light across the wooden platform where Sarah stood with her wrists bound in iron. The cold metal bit into her skin, but she barely felt it anymore. 3 days of standing here had numbed more than her body. It had hollowed out whatever hope she'd carried into this nightmare. Around her, the market buzzed with wolves inspecting goods and slaves alike. The scent of roasted meat mingled with fear sweat and desperation. Sarah kept her eyes down, focusing on the worn planks beneath her bare feet, trying to ignore the merchants haggling over her worth like she was livestock. 2 silver coins, a gruff voice announced. That's my final offer for the Omega. Sarah's heart sank. 2 coins, the price of a loaf of bread, the price of nothing. Her Pax Beta, Marcus, stood beside the platform with arms crossed, his face twisted in disgust. He'd brought her here himself, after her fated mate, the Pax Future Alpha, had rejected her publicly 3 nights ago during the Harvest Moon ceremony. The memory still burned like acid in her chest. "You're weak," Demon had said, his voice carrying across the gathered pack. "I, Demon Blackwood, reject you, Sarah Winters, as my fated mate. The Moon Goddess made a mistake binding me to an Omega with no family, no status, no worth." The pack had watched in silence as the mate bond shattered, leaving Sarah gasping on the ground while Demon walked away with Lyra Silvermane on his arm, the Beta's daughter. Beautiful and powerful, everything Sarah wasn't. Now Marcus was selling her to pay a debt her dead parents had left behind. 2 coins it is, Marcus said, reaching for the merchant's payment. But before the coins could exchange hands, the crowd suddenly parted. Whispers rippled through the market like wind through wheat. Sarah lifted her eyes and saw why. An alpha walked toward the platform, and the sheer force of his presence made every wolf in the square lower their heads instinctively. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in black leather trimmed with silver, a cloak flowing behind him like midnight water. His eyes, pale gold, almost luminous, locked onto Sarah with an intensity that stole her breath. The merchant backed away immediately, nearly dropping his coins. "Your Majesty," Marcus stammered, dropping to one knee. "We didn't expect... King Kieran, this is an honor." "How much?" The Alpha King's voice was deep and commanding, cutting through Marcus's babbling. What, Your Majesty? How much for the Omega?" Kieran's gaze never left Sarah's face. Marcus's eyes gleamed with sudden greed. 500 gold coins, Your Majesty. She's quite valuable." She was about to be sold for 2 silver. Kieran's tone dropped to something dangerous. "Do you take me for a fool, Beta?" The color drained from Marcus's face. "No, Your Majesty. I only meant... Here." Kieran tossed a leather pouch that landed heavily at Marcus's feet. 100 gold, more than she's worth to you, less than she's worth to anyone with eyes. He stepped onto the platform in one fluid motion, and suddenly he was close enough that Sarah could smell him. Pine and night air, and something wild that made her wolf stir for the first time since the rejection. His hands were warm as they closed around the iron cuffs at her wrists. The metal cracked and fell away like paper. "What's your name?" he asked quietly, though everyone in the market could hear. "Sarah," she whispered. "Sarah Winters." "Sarah." He spoke her name like a prayer, like a promise. Then he turned to face the crowd, his hand settling protectively on her shoulder. His voice rang out, clear and absolute. "Let it be known throughout every pack and kingdom, this Omega belongs to no one. Not to debt, not to disgrace, not to any wolf who thinks they can measure worth in coins." He looked down at her again, and something in those golden eyes made her chest ache with a feeling she couldn't name. "You're free," he said, "but if you choose to come with me to the Moonstone Court, I swear on my alpha blood that you'll never be traded, sold, or treated as less than what you are again." Sarah stared at him, this powerful king who'd appeared like something from a dream. Behind them, she could hear Marcus sputtering protests, could feel the eyes of every wolf burning into her back. She thought of Demon's rejection, of 3 days bound on this platform, of a lifetime being told she was worthless, and she thought of the way King Kieran had looked at her, not with pity, but with recognition, like he saw something in her that even she didn't see yet. "I'll come with you," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. A slight smile touched his lips. "Then let's leave this place behind." He swept his cloak around her shoulders, and as they walked through the parting crowd, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The mate bond with Demon was gone, shattered beyond repair, but something new was beginning, something that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. They reached a magnificent black stallion at the edge of the market. Kieran lifted her onto the horse with effortless strength, then swung up behind her. His arm wrapped around her waist, steady and protective, and she found herself leaning back against his solid chest as they rode away from Ironridge, away from her past, toward whatever destiny awaited at the Moonstone Court. "Why did you help me?" she asked, as the market faded behind them. His breath was warm against her ear when he answered. "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated, Sarah Winters, and because the moment I saw you on that platform, my wolf recognized something your former mate was too blind to see." "What's that?" "Strength that hasn't been tested yet, fire that hasn't been given permission to burn." His arm tightened slightly around her. "You're not weak, little Omega. You're a storm waiting to break." Chapter 2. The Moonstone Court. The journey to the Moonstone Court took 3 days, and with each passing hour Sarah felt the weight of her old life falling away like shed skin. Kieran was a careful protector, stopping frequently to ensure she ate and rested, never pushing her to speak when she fell silent, but always there with a steadying presence when nightmares of the rejection ceremony woke her in the dark hours before dawn. They traveled through ancient forests where the trees grew so tall their tops disappeared into mist, across rivers that sang with the voices of the old magic, and finally up a mountain road that wound toward a palace carved from white stone that seemed to glow in the moonlight. The Moonstone Court was breathtaking. Towers rose like crystalline spears toward the sky, their surfaces catching and reflecting lunar light until the entire structure shimmered like captured starlight. Gardens terraced down the mountainside, and Sarah could see wolves moving through courtyards below, their forms graceful and purposeful. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It's home," Kieran said simply. "And now it's yours as well." As they rode through the massive gates, pack members stopped to watch. Sarah tensed, expecting the same dismissive looks she'd received her entire life. But these wolves didn't sneer or whisper mockingly. Instead, they bowed their heads respectfully to their king, and to her. "Your Majesty," a dignified woman with silver-streaked hair approached as they dismounted. "Welcome home. We've prepared the Eastern Chambers as you requested." "Thank you, Elena." Kieran's hand rested lightly on Sarah's lower back. "This is Sarah Winters. She'll be staying at the court under my protection. Please ensure she has everything she needs, clothing, food, and privacy to rest." Elena's dark eyes studied Sarah with an expression that wasn't unkind, merely assessing. "Of course, Your Majesty. Miss Winters, if you'll follow me." Sarah glanced at Kieran uncertainly. He gave her an encouraging nod. "Go. Get settled. I have council matters to attend to, but I'll find you at dinner." The Eastern Chambers were more luxurious than anywhere Sarah had ever set foot. Sunlight poured through tall windows overlooking the mountains, and the bedroom held a massive bed with silk sheets the color of moonlight. A private bathing room adjoined it, complete with a pool-sized tub that steamed invitingly. "Clothes are in the wardrobe," Elena said, her tone warming slightly. "His Majesty requested we provide options suitable for court life. If nothing fits properly, the seamstresses will adjust them." She paused at the door. "You're safe here, child. Whatever brought you to that market, it's behind you now." After Elena left, Sarah stood alone in the beautiful room, almost afraid to touch anything. Her reflection in the polished mirror showed a thin girl with tangled dark hair, wearing a borrowed cloak over the rags she'd been sold in. She didn't look like she belonged in a place like this, but she remembered Kieran's words. "You're a storm waiting to break." She drew a bath and sank into the hot water, letting it wash away days of dirt and shame. Afterward, she found a simple but elegant dress in deep blue that fit surprisingly well. By the time a servant knocked to escort her to dinner, she felt almost like a different person. The dining hall was intimate rather than grand, a smaller room clearly meant for private meals rather than state banquets. Kieran stood when she entered, and she saw approval flash in his golden eyes. "Better?" he asked. "Much, thank you." She took the seat he indicated, acutely aware of how close they sat at the small table. "Your home is incredible." "Tell me about yours," he said, as servants brought food, roasted venison, fresh bread, vegetables glazed with honey. "Your pack, your life before." Sarah hesitated, but something about his steady gaze made her want to answer honestly. "There's not much to tell. My parents died when I was young. I was raised by the pack, but as an Omega with no family. I was always on the outside, always the one doing the work no one else wanted, always overlooked. Until your mate Bond manifested." The old pain flickered. "Until Demon rejected it, rejected me. Said the moon goddess made a mistake." She met Kieran's eyes. Maybe he was right. No. The single word carried absolute conviction. "The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, Sarah, but wolves do. Your demon made the biggest mistake of his life when he rejected you." "How can you be so sure?" Kieran leaned forward slightly, his intensity making her breath catch. "Because I've spent 2 centuries building this kingdom, fighting wars, negotiating treaties, reading wolves like they're open books. And in 200 years I've never met an Omega with your kind of resilience. 3 days on a trading platform, publicly humiliated, rejected by your fated mate, and you're still here, still standing, still have fire in your eyes when you think no one's watching." Heat crept up her neck. "You've been watching me? Since the moment I saw you." His voice dropped lower. "The question is, what are you going to do with that fire now that you're free to let it burn?" Before she could answer, the door burst open. A young wolf with auburn hair and warrior's leathers strode in, grinning widely. "Brother, Elena said you brought home a—" He stopped short, seeing Sarah. "Oh, hello. Theo, meet Sarah Winters. Sarah, my younger brother and captain of my guard, Theodore." Theo's grin returned. "Call me Theo, and ignore anything my brother has told you about me. Especially the stories about the incident with the ambassador's daughter." He dropped into a chair uninvited, studying Sarah with frank curiosity. "So you're the Omega from Ironridge. Word travels fast. The whole court is buzzing." "Theo," Kieran warned. "What? I'm just saying it's about time you showed interest in someone. It's been decades since— Ow!" He rubbed his shin where Kieran had obviously kicked him under the table. "Fine, fine. I'll be subtle." Despite her nervousness, Sarah found herself smiling. Theo's easy manner was infectious, and she could see genuine affection between the brothers beneath their banter. "Don't let him corrupt you," Kieran said dryly. "He's a terrible influence." "I'm a delightful influence," Theo corrected. "Tomorrow, Sarah, I'll show you the training grounds. You should learn to defend yourself properly. Any Omega under the King's protection needs to know how to handle a blade." "I'd like that," Sarah said, surprising herself. As dinner continued, surrounded by laughter and conversation, Sarah felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like an outsider looking in. She felt like she might actually belong, and when Kieran walked her back to her chambers later, his hand brushing hers in the moonlit corridor, she wondered if the moon goddess hadn't made a mistake with Demon after all. Maybe she'd simply been clearing the path for something, someone better. "Sleep well, Sarah," Kieran said at her door. "Tomorrow, your real life begins." Chapter 3. The Luna's Trial. 6 weeks passed at the Moonstone Court, and Sarah transformed. Under Theo's training, her body grew stronger, her reflexes sharper. Elena taught her court etiquette and pack politics, while other members of Kieran's inner circle welcomed her with varying degrees of warmth. But it was Kieran himself who changed her most profoundly. He sought her company constantly, morning walks through the gardens, afternoon strategy sessions, where he asked her opinions on pack disputes, evenings spent talking until the stars wheeled overhead. He never touched her beyond casual gestures, never pushed for more than she was ready to give, but the connection between them grew until it felt like a living thing, electric and undeniable. Sarah's wolf recognized him as something precious, something meant for her, but she was terrified to trust it. The memory of Demon's rejection still ached like a half-healed wound. Then came the night of the Sovereign Moon, the most sacred night in the werewolf calendar, when the moon goddess's power was strongest and pack bonds were renewed. The entire court gathered in the great ceremonial hall, and Sera stood beside Kieran on the raised dais, wearing a silver gown that flowed like liquid moonlight. "Tonight," Kieran announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "we honor the bonds that make us strong, but I have something additional to propose." The crowd fell silent. Kieran turned to Sera, taking both her hands in his. "Sera Winters, 6 weeks ago I found you in a market, being sold for less than you were worth. Since then you've proven yourself brave, intelligent, compassionate, and stronger than most wolves I've known in 2 centuries. His golden eyes blazed with emotion. "Before the moon goddess and this pack, I ask you to consider becoming my Luna. Not because you're an Omega who needs protection, but because you're a woman who deserves to stand beside someone who sees your true value." Gasps rippled through the hall. Sera's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst. "Kieran, I—" The doors slammed open. Demon strode in, Lyra at his side, with Marcus and a contingent of Iron Ridge wolves behind them. He looked furious and desperate in equal measure. "This is a farce," Demon snarled. "That Omega is mine by right of the mate bond." "You rejected that bond," Kieran said coldly, stepping in front of Sera protectively. "You have no claim here, Blackwood." "I was hasty. I made a mistake." Demon's eyes fixed on Sera with an intensity that once would have made her hope. Now it only made her angry. "Sera, I've come to reclaim you, to accept the mate bond properly." "How convenient," Kieran said, "that you discovered this mistake only after she was taken in by another alpha. Tell me, Blackwood, what changed? Her status? Her proximity to power?" Demon's face flushed. "She's my fated mate. The moon goddess." "The moon goddess," interrupted a new voice, ancient and resonant, "has heard enough lies." Everyone turned. An elderly woman had appeared at the back of the hall. No one had seen her enter. She walked forward with the aid of a gnarled staff, but her eyes glowed with otherworldly silver light. "Elder Moira," Kieran said, bowing his head respectfully. The room followed suit. Elder Moira was one of the moon goddess's oracles, and her appearances were rare and significant. "The young alpha speaks of fate," Moira said, "but he rejected it when it didn't suit his ambition. He wanted power and status, not the true strength the goddess offered him in this Omega." She turned to Sera. "Child, you have a choice before you. The bond that was rejected can be rebuilt if both wolves consent, or you can walk a different path, one the goddess has been weaving since before you were born." Sera looked at Demon, at the mate who had broken her heart, who had called her worthless in front of everyone she knew, who had only returned when she gained value in his eyes. Then she looked at Kieran, at the king who had seen her worth when she was nothing, who had protected her without demanding anything in return, who had helped her discover her own strength instead of trying to diminish it. The choice wasn't difficult. "I reject you, Demon Blackwood," she said clearly, her voice steady and strong. "I reject the bond the moon goddess offered us, because you rejected it first. You rejected me when I needed you most, and I won't let you reclaim me now that it's convenient." The mate bond, already shattered, turned to dust completely. Demon staggered as if struck. Sera turned to Kieran, taking his hands in hers. "And I accept your offer, King Kieran, not because I need protection, but because I choose you. Because you chose me when no one else did. Because you helped me find the strength to stand here and make this choice myself." Elder Moira smiled, lifting her staff. "Then let it be witnessed and blessed. The moon goddess recognizes this bond, one built not on fate's decree, but on choice, respect, and true seeing. May it prove stronger than any bond that came before." Silver light burst from the staff, washing over Sera and Kieran. Sera gasped as something new and powerful clicked into place between them, not the fated mate bond she'd lost, but something equally profound. A chosen bond forged in freedom and strengthened by mutual respect. Kieran pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "My Luna," he whispered. "My Alpha," she answered. Behind them, Demon was being escorted out by Theo and the guards, his protests fading. Lyra followed, shooting Sarah a look of pure venom. Marcus looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor. But Sarah didn't care about any of them anymore. She was exactly where she belonged. The celebration lasted until dawn, and when Kieran finally led her to his private chambers, now their chambers, Sarah felt like she was stepping into the life she was always meant to live. Chapter 4. The Luna's Ascension. 3 months after the Sovereign Moon ceremony, Sarah stood on the battlements of Moonstone Court, watching the sun set over her kingdom. Her kingdom. The thought still felt surreal sometimes. Admiring the view, Kieran's arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned into his warmth. Admiring everything, she said, thinking about how different life is now. Better, I hope. Immeasurably. She turned in his arms. Did you know when you bought me from that market what would happen? He smiled. I knew you were special. I didn't know you'd become the strongest Luna this kingdom has ever known. It was true. In 3 months, Sarah had transformed the court. She'd established new laws protecting Omegas from exploitation, created training programs for wolves without families, and negotiated treaties with neighboring packs that emphasized mutual respect over dominance. The court adored her. Even wolves who'd initially doubted an Omega Luna had been won over by her compassion combined with surprising steel. Speaking of which, Kieran said, there's something I need to tell you. A messenger arrived from Ironridge today. Sarah tensed. What did they want? Demon is dead. Killed in a challenge by one of his own betas last week. Apparently he'd become unstable after losing you, making poor decisions. The pack fell apart. Sarah waited for grief but felt only a distant sadness for what might have been. And Lyra? Fled to the Eastern Territories. Marcus is trying to hold what's left of Ironridge together, but they're scattered and weak. Kieran studied her face. How do you feel? Like that was someone else's life, Sarah said honestly. Like I'm finally free of it completely. Good. He kissed her forehead. Because I have a proposal. Several Ironridge wolves have requested asylum here. They're tired of chaos and want to join a stronger pack. I thought we could offer them sanctuary, rebuild them under our banner. You want to absorb Ironridge? Sarah considered it. That's generous, considering how they treated your Luna. I want to give wolves a second chance, the way someone once gave my Luna a second chance. His eyes gleamed with affection. Besides, you've proven that broken things can be rebuilt stronger. Why not a broken pack? Sarah thought of the Ironridge wolves she'd known, good people trapped in a bad situation following weak leadership. On one condition, we establish the same protections there that we have here. No more Omegas sold to pay debts. No more wolves valued by status instead of character. Done. Kieran pulled her closer. You know, when I rode into that market 3 months ago, I was just planning to free you. I didn't expect to find my Luna, my equal, your Storm? Sarah finished, remembering his words. My everything, he corrected, and kissed her properly. Later that night, they stood together in the Great Hall as the Ironridge refugees arrived. Sarah recognized some faces. Wolves who had ignored her, some who had been cruel, others who had simply been indifferent. They looked at her now with a mixture of awe and shame, seeing the Luna Queen in the Omega they'd dismissed. Elena approached with a young Omega girl who couldn't have been more than 16, thin and frightened. Your Majesty, this is Lila. She was going to be sold next week. Sarah knelt in front of the girl, taking her trembling hands. You're safe now, Lila. No one will ever sell you or make you feel worthless again. I promise. The girl burst into tears. Thank you, Luna. Thank you. As Sarah comforted her, she caught Kieran watching with an expression of such pride and love that it stole her breath. This was her purpose, not just to be Luna, but to use her power to protect wolves like her younger self, to transform a system that had broken her into one that would catch and lift others before they could fall. That night, lying in Kieran's arms with moonlight streaming through the windows, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her here, from rejection to redemption, from worthlessness to power, from being sold for 2 silver coins to becoming a Luna Queen whose name would be remembered for generations. What are you thinking about? Kieran asked sleepily, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her back. That I was wrong, she said. The moon goddess didn't make a mistake with Demon. She was never offering me a fated mate bond with him. She was offering me a choice, to accept what I thought I deserved, or to wait for what I actually deserved. Wise Luna, he murmured. Wise goddess, she corrected. Outside, the moon rose full and bright over Moonstone Court. In its light, Sarah Winters, once sold for 2 silver coins, now Luna Queen of the most powerful pack in the realm, finally understood her true worth. Not because a king had claimed her, but because she had claimed herself first. And that made all the difference.